So welcome back to, is this episode 6? I think, yeah it is. Or no, maybe it's 7. Of Balancing Chaos. I've lost track already. With
Kelley
and Gretchen. And we have a guest today, and we'll get to her in just a minute. But just wanted to start off by apologizing about the audio from last week because I screwed up and the microphone was not connected in the way that I thought it was. But today it should sound much better. So we should be all ready to roll with our fixed audio, so I apologize for the strange sound of last week. So, Kelley, do you want to introduce our guest?
Sure. So I'm really excited today because we have, actually, she's one of my very best friends, and she's also a domestic violence prosecutor. I always get twisted when I say that. And so we're gonna talk to her about that and ask her, and she's also a new mother, and we're gonna talk to her about some of those challenges. Well, so, Shira.
Thank you for having me today. I am a domestic violence prosecutor down in York County. However, this is nothing associated, official business of me being an ADA, but just here because I am a fan of balancing chaos.
Yay. We have fans, Kelley. Actually, I've gotten some interesting feedback of people that are listening that I really didn't know were listening, or I expect our neighborhood friends to listen because we make them, but some far-flung people have listened and said, I really like that. And I was like, oh, you listen, thank you. It's awesome.
I got a text today while we were together, Shira and I were together, from someone that said, oh, I tried Facebook Marketplace this weekend, posted a couple of things and made $78. Your podcast is making me money.
I use Facebook Marketplace to buy, my older daughter wants a pottery wheel for Christmas, and I will tell you that I am a maximizer, so I research every purchase, and there are crappy kids pottery wheels. Every review is like, it broke, it sucks, it's terrible, it's not a real pottery wheel, and a real pottery wheel is like $600. So I went on Facebook Marketplace, pottery wheel, see what I could find. And they had a $500 pottery wheel at a school back home where I grew up for $75.
And you bought it.
And I bought it. I sent my mom over. I was like, Mom, you got to go to the school and you got to take cash and I will pay you back. So she went and picked it up, and it is in my garage. My daughter better not listen to this podcast because it will ruin her Christmas.
And Shira, do you have a Facebook Marketplace confession?
Do I? My husband just sold a tractor on Facebook Marketplace.
He did?
Yes,
well,
he did.
She texted me and said, Shira has an aging dog, and she said, oh, guys, if you come up with any dog ramps, let me know. And I went from that text thread to the Facebook Market thread and sent her 3 dog ramps in a row, but they only pops up in your area,
right? And
then you said, oh shoot, I didn't even think to look on
yeah
there.
And unfortunately I did look in my area, and there wasn't. The closest they were bringing me to like Rochester, New Hampshire or something, which I wasn't.
So Southern Maine probably just doesn't allow aging dogs.
Great. We have all the aging dogs.
It's hipster dogs only, so
we send them up north.
Old, exactly All right, so let's get started with talking to Shira. So you have some questions.
Yes.
Or some things to talk about.
So Shira has a really interesting job, and it's important work. And I think you have to be a really special person to do it. But one of the points that she and I were talking about recently, and we actually talked about last week with gun violence, you had read some reports that there is an association with mass shootings and domestic violence, and I was just wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yes, this is a hot topic that is going to be started to be heavily researched now. And if you look at our mass shootings in the United States, they are doing research on it, and they're trying to find out, what do these mass shooters have in common? And the biggest thing that they have in common is a domestic violence history, or that part of mass shooting, there was a domestic violence correlation in it. And we know in that recent Texas shooting, the domestic violence correlation of being the church he went to had a family member in it. And when I say family member, it can be broad. In the sense, I believe it was his significant other's grandmother or mother, to something to that effect. And so what we're doing now is trying to really put out, if we can stop domestic violence early on, we may actually be saving hundreds of lives because they can go on to be mass shooters.
So have you might not even seen this because I think it just came up on my Twitter before I came over here, the shooting in California.
I was teaching at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy yesterday, and during the presentation someone had mentioned that there was a mass shooting.
So there was a mass shooting, and so there's two pieces. One is that they said it was a school shooting, it wasn't a school shooting, but the Washington Post said it was a school shooting. He couldn't get in because of lockdown procedures, but for 6 minutes he fired at all the windows, and broke windows. Kids were hit inside with breaking glass. So to that I say, so no child died in that school from a shooting. But I said you have a school full of kids who spent 6 minutes knowing that someone was trying to get in and kill them, which is going to be a whole level of trauma. The second piece popped up just before I came over here, which is that they just found the body of that shooter's wife under the floorboards of his home.
Oh. Yep. And that's a lot.
So it ties in last week, and it's all connected.
And if you just even Google it, you'll see the articles that have been coming out recently about the correlation between domestic violence and mass shooters.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think? I guess I get a little depressed when we talk about all these topics, not necessarily on this podcast, but just in my life and at work especially. You had said in the statistics for the state of Maine are that we rank 9th nationally for domestic violence deaths. What do you think? How are we going to prevent this from happening altogether? How are we going to reduce domestic violence?
Can I ask a question to go on with that?
Yeah.
How does domestic violence homicide rank in Maine? I would think it's it has to be number 1 or 2 in the if you're murdered, it's probably by someone.
Yes,
you know.
It's most likely by someone you know. And we're lucky in the state of Maine. We do have low crime rate, and we have a low homicide rate too. However, the homicides in Maine, half of them are domestic violence related, and that's a pretty high percentage. So in Maine, if you're murdered, you're most likely to be murdered by someone that you once loved or you still loved at the time.
And for I don't want to say mass killings, but I think that's what they call it. But there was the family in Dexter where the husband killed the ex-wife and 2 children and then himself. And then there was one up in Aroostook County where the boyfriend came and attacked several members of the girlfriend's family, and some died and some lived. So in especially those mass killings, it seems like they're almost, and this is not a statistic because I don't know them off the top of my head, but it seems like they're almost always related to domestic incidences.
Yeah, and there was I think they define mass murder as 4 people or more. That might be the federal of how they qualify mass murder. And I know there was a recent one, and it wasn't in my area, where they found the police found someone dead on the side of the road, and it ended up being a neighbor helping a victim of domestic violence out, and then the defendant had killed her, the neighbor, and someone else, a home health person, someone else that was at the house. And so all of these are domestic violence related, even though this neighbor is not, a family or household member as we define it in our law, but it's all connected to domestic violence because the reason that person was murdered is because they were helping out this domestic violence victim. Oh. As far as your question, Kelley, how do we stop this or how do we reduce this? I mean, it's a loaded question because, I think if I knew it, I would try to do it. However, I think we are right now absolutely putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. We have done, think about how much money we spend on combating domestic violence, just state of Maine, of how many domestic violence agencies we have. We're employing them. The state of Maine itself, literally federal funds, grants, paying for prosecutors' positions to combat domestic violence. And if we could literally just have our communities, I would like to take a radical approach in a sense. And I think
radical.
I think that's, literally, if I'm going to bring up, I know nothing. I am not the prosecutor. It's not even in my county about, I don't know if you guys, it's in the Bangor, Alex Gray, who is, I don't know his position with the waterfront concerts, or what is it even called? Is it called waterfront concerts?
He owns the concerts themselves, and he owns the company that books the concerts.
Okay. And so his affiliation, and again, I know nothing about the case except what everyone else knows on this. But here we have, someone that I would say is a prominent figure in the Bangor, and then Bangor did do a contract. And I know if they didn't, financially, it would probably ruin Bangor. But at what point, what would he have had to do for Bangor to say, nope, we're not going to contract with them?
It's almost a metaphor for domestic violence in general, though. Because when I think about it, I think about, again, my rural Washington County upbringing, and in Bangor, there are women's shelters, there's services in Bangor, and maybe there are services that I just don't know about because my family never needed them in Washington County. But I think, so if your choice is to leave and lose your financial support and lose this, what is making your life better, or stay and hope it doesn't happen again. So the Alex Gray thing is almost like a metaphor for that in many ways, because the concerts have been a huge economic engine for our area, and then you have this one person who is we don't have to say alleged anymore, right? Because I forget what he pled. But
so he pled guilty, which I think was the worst guilty plea ever, because you hear him goes, but he maintains his innocence. And what he did is what's called a deferred disposition is he on. Okay. And by law, he has to plead guilty if he wants the deferred disposition. And then he gets will get dismissed at the end of the term. I don't know how long it was, if it was a year deferred disposition or not. But I can't, if you notice in the words, so he had to say the words guilty because by law to get this deferred disposition he had to, but then he turns around and says, but I disagree with everything that was in the police report, and maintains his innocence in the newspaper. So
so I do have the part of me that is the most Christian part of me for an atheist.
I can't imagine what you're going to say, Gretchen.
Is that, I always have hope that people can do better next time.
Yeah.
Like at what point is it, no, it's never going to be better? At what point is it that, no, I've what's the church word?
Sinned?
Repented?
Oh, yeah, repented for your sins?
I've repented for my sins. Yeah. I'm a better person. This won't happen again. So I do kind of try to hope that people have the capacity to change. But do they?
Is
there a recidivism?
Well, this is the
statistic?
debate. So I will tell the listeners that I'm sitting at a table, maybe I shouldn't even confess this, with two people who are vehemently against Chick-fil-A.
Solidarity. No Chick-fil-A.
I have been yelled at numerous occasions by both Gretchen and Shira.
I have never yelled.
No. I'm using yell. It's an inflammatory word, but I have been informed of their feelings of my support of chicken eaten at Chick-fil-A because of you can state your own position on it. But it's interesting to me because I see these as very similar issues, and when this first case came up with the waterfront concerts, I felt really sad personally because I don't want to support domestic violence in any form, but yet for the city of Bangor, the waterfront concerts have essentially revitalized the city in every way. I mean, it's changed the city. I mean, when I went away and came back, this was a completely different city. And a lot of people say it's because of the casino. I also don't want to give the casino credit. So I'd like to credit it to that. But then it's heartbreaking to me to think that, we have someone struggling with domestic violence. And again, I also think this is related to mental health, which we talked about in the last episode. I think that our mental health services are poor, and I think he was intoxicated at the time.
Which is not an excuse.
I'm not saying it's an excuse, but I'm just saying I think that all feeds back into poor mental health. Infrastructure in our society at large is an unhealthy society that leads to unhealthy behaviors and outcomes.
So I don't go to. We probably don't go to Chick-fil-A for many of the same reasons, and that as a corporation they have supported anti-equality measures and things like that, which I am all for equality, and that's what I want. So my thing with that is that Chick-fil-A as a company is saying this is what we support. When you come to a situation like the concerts, it's owned by Alex Gray, and I obviously do not support domestic violence, but the company really stepped back and said, this does not represent our organization, and they are a big organization now. Mm-hmm. If he was a performer, I probably wouldn't pay to go see him perform, but it's harder when you put it in the context of this, he's part of this big organization. If if Chick-fil-A was awesome and open 7 days a week and did not use their corporate money to support anti-equality, but one of their franchise owners did, I would not boycott Chick-fil-A. I might boycott that franchise, but I wouldn't boycott the company. That's kind of where my line is drawn. I don't know about you, Shira.
Well, it's just hard because, we're talking about, Kelley asked the question is like, what can we do to stop domestic violence? Well, what we're doing right now, we know is not working.
Right.
No.
So, and we have no clue of actually how big of a problem this is. I mean, we see a little portion of it. I may see more because it's my daily work, but I'm still seeing a little portion. You guys probably hardly see it. You see it in the news, and that may be it. But it is a humongous problem, and if we really want to be serious, like we want to stop domestic violence, we have to take a radical approach. Just like, do we want to stop gun violence? We don't know what the answer is, but we need to start changing something. So I know you guys talked about gun violence last time, and you talked about semi-automatic guns, getting rid of them. Like, let's just, and I'm for them. Like, hey, let's try it out for a year. Let's say, let's try it for 2 years. Sorry, you guys can still hunt with your rifles, things like that. Anything that you have to load multiple times, and get multiple bullets fired. Let's just outlaw them for a few years. Isn't it worth the try just to see?
Even if it saves one life, then wasn't that worth it to that one person?
Exactly, and that's what I feel like with domestic violence is we have to. So let's just try. Hey, you're guilty of domestic violence. Let's run you out of town. Let's literally, you are done with everything. You're done with it. And let's see. I mean, because what is it gonna, we have to do something. And if we just keep doing what we're doing and we're just taking these little approaches, like maybe, I'm going around and training new officers and, we're doing collaborative stuff or, new things are popping up nationwide. But literally that is going, at this rate, 100 years from now, maybe we've, reduced it some. So to get serious, I think radical ideas need to be done. And things like the Alex Gray situation, who's still associated with this this big business, I don't think is all right. I think let's take this approach and let's try it. And then, yes, financially, different towns may be hurt, but also, could you imagine if we reduce domestic violence, how much money we're actually saving in the long run of so many things that are affiliated with domestic violence, and we can put it back into things like this.
And I think part of me, the cynical side of me, is that even if we ran him out of town, nothing would change. That's okay, so he'd be gone, but I feel like it's such a huge problem that nothing would be changed, and I wouldn't get to see Sarah McLachlan.
Well, he's just one and I'm saying we'd all. Right.
You're just using that as a figurative,
because he would have to. It would have to the exact same time. Everything like that would have to. It's just absolutely no. That person, it happens one time, you're done. I mean, you're pretty much done in the society of getting jobs, anything. Right. And we have to support those victims so much for this to be successful. Right. Because financially, sometimes they're very dependent, and it's like they're worth, with the children, stuff like that. We have to help that victim so much that to actually make that work.
And I think the cost is much greater than we're even recognizing at the surface, because adverse childhood experiences, I don't know if we've talked about in this podcast, but we call it ACEs in healthcare, and there's numerous strong research to support that the higher your ACE score, which ACE is any adverse event in... So
like that school full of kids that were shot for 6 minutes?
That's what I was thinking too when you said that. So that would, a divorce of a parent, a death of a parent, being abused as a child emotionally, sexually, physically, all of those contribute to your ACE score, and the higher your ACE score, it's directly correlated with chronic health. And every chronic health disease when you're older, basically your health is dependent on your childhood. So if you're being raped, molested, physically or emotionally abused as a child, that is a cost to society, not only in healthcare costs, but also in economic productivity and ability to, contribute to society. So that's why I get really frustrated, and this is where I turn. It's so funny because just last week I was called a brainwashed Republican and a raging liberal, all in the same week. But
that's pretty hard to do,
right? I thought,
you feel like a badge for each of them.
And then I loved it because I kept saying, no, actually, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. So, but This is where I get really frustrated with healthcare reform specifically, because we look at adults when they're adults as adults and say, well, why can't they go get a job? What's their problem? Like, why are they homeless? And I hear this all the time, and we see it in our neighborhood thread. People will yell at homeless people about all of these issues that are completely unwarranted, and it really frustrates me.
And 99% unrelated to the homeless population in any way.
But people people like you or I don't just wake up and become homeless. I mean, these people who have horrible childhoods are much more likely to become homeless. They're much more likely to become addicted to drugs. They're much more likely to need social services. So we look at them as adults and think, like, you piece of crap, like, what is wrong with you? But we don't look at the 2-year-old child that's getting molested by all the mother's boyfriends. And we never think about, like, how the childhood experiences affects the outcome.
And then the other piece, too, when you say the mother's boyfriends, I also feel like you hear it from the situation where, I feel like I've heard this several times in these cases, where the mother has to have a job, and her job is shift work, and she can't afford daycare. So the nice old guy that lives in the apartment next door says, oh, I'll watch your girls. That's totally fine. I've seen that story in the Bangor papers before. And all of a sudden, now it turns out, actually, because he knows and he sees it, he's like, I have something you need, you have something I want. And she's just like, well, he's kind of creepy. You know, you can see her brain, like, he's kind of creepy, but I need to go work or else I won't have a place to live. So I hope that nothing happens. And then you find out that something has happened. And that's, and that stuff is happening all over because we don't support single mothers, and, we don't support, we don't have quality childcare at the times that people can work, and all that kind of stuff.
And we hear actually children who've been sexually assaulted by, let's say, a stepfather or somebody, why didn't you, the question is usually asked by police, like, who did you report it to? And then usually, why didn't you want to tell your mom? We want to know further. Or why didn't you tell police? And it's usually is because they saw that they knew that if they reported, the stepfather, whoever was going to be taken out of their home, and that they didn't think their mom could be able to, financially or whatever, really take care of themselves and the children, if the stepfather or whoever was taken out of the home. So children even recognize it, and that's why they actually don't talk sometimes.
Because they're protecting their mom.
Exactly.
I actually was just pointed out the Shaw House to Ingrid. I'm like, that's the teen homeless shelter. And she was like, what do you mean? That doesn't even make sense. Like, she was like there are people that don't or can't live with their, why can't they just go live with their parents? Like, why, what world is this that you're exposing me to? And I was like, well, maybe their parents are abusive, or their parents won't let them live with them, or maybe their parents can't take care of them, and so it's easier to not have a home than to be with their parents. And her mind was just blown. But
I was touring a facility and at a meeting last week, and I heard these crazy stats. So 170,000 people in Maine live on less than $12,000 a year annually, but of that 170,000, 5,000 became homeless last year. And the majority of the 5,000, it's people who've aged out of the foster system, and so they don't have any natural family supports anymore. And one of the reasons to get into the foster system is an assault, or I mean, you'd know more than I would, but that would be my assumption. So I don't know. I'm with you on the issue. I definitely agree with a radical fix, but I get really sad when I think about it, and depressed almost, because I just feel like I don't know what the radical solution is. I mean, we can definitely run, prominent people out of town, but like, what about these hidden cases that people don't talk about, which when people confess that have happened in their families.
And then if you run the prominent people out of town, and they have been employing 100 people for 5 years, and now those people don't have jobs, so now they have that financial instability. Like, it's such a big problem, and it's hard to understand exactly how to confront it and how to wrap your brain around it. Like, I could not do it as a career every day to try to look at it every day, because I feel like, to me, it'd be like if I was standing in front of my washing machine, and I threw a load in, I turned around, there was another load there, and I'd be like, I don't even have this much clothes, and then I would start another load, and it would just be like this, the laundry pile would be growing, and I couldn't do the laundry fast enough, is how it would feel to me.
Yeah, it's rare I actually look at the big picture. Like when Kelley first started off, how do you stop that? Like, I don't know. Even though I'm supposed to be an expert in domestic violence. But I really think of it as almost like a civil war needs to happen. Something that radical.
Don't say that.
but look at from the Civil War, what happened, progression, and it's what we're doing. Absolutely. I have no faith that what we're doing now, we're going to end up with no domestic violence.
Have you seen anything, excuse me, have you seen anything work? Have you had any instances where you saw something that made a tiny dent in that pile of laundry?
Gosh.
Like a second washing machine.
Yeah. No, not really. But I do go to a lot of national conferences, and there's things nationally that other states are doing that I try to then come back to Maine and implement. But I still see it as another Band-Aid. Maybe it's that second Band-Aid that's now being put on this bullet hole. Right. But nothing that, the numbers are so high. They're so high that there's nothing that's going to even come close to cutting it to a drastic measure.
This is a little bit of a radical thought, but I wonder just about the physiology of, and I hate to target men because I know that women have been accused, there have been women who have been charged and found guilty, I don't want to use the inaccurate terms, of assaults, but the statistics show that it's more likely a man.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Overwhelming.
So, the way men are physiologically wired, sex is a fundamental need. It's like water and food, right? So it is. if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I wonder.
You mean like men or humans?
Well, humans, but men. That's a good clarification.
I'm just checking.
You don't need sex.
Well, because Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
It generally is inclusive.
It is absolutely. But men have hormonally a greater desire and need for sex, whereas women could go, a lot longer and could care less, right? So I wonder if part of this physiologically is playing into it. No?
Of why men abuse women?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. My guess would not be any medical reason why.
I think there's a lot of societal reasons. So you have sons and I have daughters. We had this conversation at the house the other night about how all these stories are coming out and how, and my husband is awesome. And I was like, you don't feel this as personally as I do. And you don't feel, and because I feel it personally as a woman, I've had these experiences. And I look at my daughters and I'm like, God, I don't want you to have these experiences, but you probably are going to. Mm-hmm. You probably are, because that's what's going to happen. So when you see all this toxic masculinity, my husband is very much not a toxically masculine guy at all. But he was also raised by a single mother and two sisters, and I really feel like that has something to do with it, because he didn't have an example of a father to emulate, and so he's ended up being the most awesome father and partner, and it's been great. But he doesn't feel it like I do looking at daughters. So their thing the other night, it was, all my friends seem to have boys. And so they were, how'd you phrase it? Because you phrased it.
Well, sometimes I think that it's really a lot of it's the media. There's a media portrayal, and then women, too, especially women who have daughters, there's there's just an automatic hatred of men, or that men are lesser than. And there are a couple examples. The woman that Gretchen and I were talking with, she had read this on this Facebook thread that a little boy had touched a little girl's dress in class, and she went home and told her mom, and her mom said, next time he touches your dress, kick him so hard in the balls that he needs to go to the hospital. And she was like, that was a little extreme. And then her son was on the playground, and the girls were singing, girls go to Venus to get more genius, boys go to Jupiter to get more Jupiter, which we had this when we were kids. Right. But the kids, her boys, felt like if the words were reversed and the genders were reversed, the teachers would have stopped it. But because it's somewhat now okay to kind of attack men. So then, I haven't told you this one, but my older son, has a friend who is a girl, and she was over on Sunday, and completely unsolicited, because obviously I wasn't having this conversation with them, she came up to me and said, did you know my friend's mom said girls rule, boys drool? And I said, oh, really? And she goes, isn't that mean? And I go, yeah, that is mean. And she goes, can you believe an adult said that? And she's a 6-year-old girl. So that's the kind of messaging I'm talking about. Like, just putting a blanket term on all men that they all suck. Because I hope my boys I'm raising to be respectable men. And I don't want them to be...
Well, part of it, too, is...
portrayed as the person they're not.
And I definitely don't make the blanket thing all men. But when you watch... the news, the reason why it's story after story after story of asshole men is because more men are assholes. And don't spit out your tea. But they are. So it's like right now we're in the midst of the Roy Moore thing and the Harvey Weinstein. And there are some fantastic Christian responses, by the way, to the Roy Moore thing. And I texted you one of them. And it was a Twitter response that said, if we have a problem believing the word of a teenage girl, then we have to pack up the nativity set and go away. Because,
that was an awesome one.
And I thought it was great. Like, and then it said, so first it started off with the girl, and then like other girls. And they said, well, yeah, we all knew. And actually the mall banned him because he was so creepy with teenage girls. And actually, the YMCA banned him because he was so creepy with girls, and everyone knew. But meanwhile, he just got higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And nobody ever, kneecapped him and said, no, you're a creep with teenage girls, so maybe you shouldn't be a DA, maybe you shouldn't be a senator, maybe you shouldn't be a judge. They even told him not to be a judge, and he still got to be a judge. I don't understand that, but all these people knew, and the more they started talking, well, okay, we all have to say, yeah, we knew, and it's
so that's the same with the
crazy.
Alex Gray situation. So let's say he committed domestic violence assault again, and it came, let's say it was reported again. Then, would you guys then go to waterfront concerts if they kept him on? Third time? Then we find out a sexual...
Was it a third time? I thought it was just a first time.
No, I'm saying. So, let's say the first time, let's say Kelley, and I don't know if you do, but I could see you still going.
Oh, you're teaching me.
I am.
I actually take this domestic violence much more... I would be much more likely to ban a company because of this than I will be because of the homosexual marriage, which I know we've had a fight about before, or disagreement about before, but... just because I think I understand the religious aspects of why strong faith Christians believe in marriages between a man and a woman. Not that I believe that, but I can at least understand it. So to me, it's not as radical as a man shoving a woman's face off the tar 5 times and almost killing her. That's just where I draw my lines.
But the same with that, they knew, the YMCA, at what point, should they ban him? And I'm saying the same thing in this situation. At what point does the city of Bangor says, no, we're out. You got to get this guy or we're done. Mm-hmm. What point? I'm saying it's one. It's one. And that's when it stops. It's the first time. And it's the first time that's come to the police's attention and that, a case has proceeded.
Okay, I have a question for the two of you because I know you're... We'd have to call Shira an extreme liberal too, probably. I don't know though.
I think on social issues, fiscal issues, maybe not as much, but yes, social issues.
Don't mess with her.
Okay.
She might not even be as nice as you, Gretchen, about social issues. Believe it or not. So here's my question to the two of you. I always thought throughout the campaign, the Clinton campaign, Hillary Clinton campaign, that it was not beneficial to the campaign to have Bill front and center. What are your thoughts on that as liberals? Because an article just came out that I read that was very interesting because I think it was in response.
Sent it to me.
It was in response to this senator.
Yeah.
And so Republican, Democrats are attacking Republicans attacking Democrats, and everyone's basically saying your exact point that all parties need to not ever promote or endorse candidates who have records.
But I think the difference for me is that the people that he had relations with were adults.
It was consensual?
It was consensual and they were adults.
Okay.
How old was Monica Lewinsky? 23? Do you remember being 23 and all of a sudden you're 23 and you're in the White House and you could go home and be like, guess what I did?
But don't you think that's a misabuse of his power, too?
Have you ever seen him in person?
No.
To talk? I actually went to one of his re-election rallies. This is in 96. And I went with my best friend. It was over here in Bangor. And we stood in line outside for hours. And we just went because we were like, whatever. We don't have anything to do. We're young. 21. And we went. And it was crazy. He definitely has a charisma And he, like, the electricity in the room, and if she listens to this, she will remember that night. And we were, like, a mile away. But he just was like, oh, hey, he's great. Like, he had this charisma, and it was after that that this all came up. But I remember her and I being like, yeah, I can see that. Like, yeah, he's old, like our dads, but he just definitely had...
So you want to have sex with Bill Clinton?
No,
this is what I'm hearing.
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
You can see how people would.
But I can see how a 21-year-old who's in the White House who could, like I could do this right now? Like, well, I don't know. I can picture it because we all know that those 21-year-olds don't have their frontal cortex formed yet.
Yeah.
So their decision-making is poor, but they are not teenagers. They are adults. They're consenting adults. They were all consenting adults, and so he was unfaithful to his wife. Okay, yeah, that sucks. Mm-hmm. That part sucks. But he was not... I don't necessarily see it as abuse. Because, you know, I don't think she saw it as abuse, necessarily. Maybe older, she's like, wow, maybe he took advantage of somebody who was young, but she wasn't a kid. That's how I see it.
What do you think, Shira?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there is, a difference in power in that relationship. Yeah. Not good judgment, on his part whatsoever. But I hate that when we talk about Hillary Clinton, this is what we have to talk about.
I know.
And this is, I think, part of it. Like Hillary Clinton, she's a strong woman. Mm-hmm. Look at her, what she's done. Look at, her background, her education. And that, when we talk about her election, stuff like that, what does it go back to? It goes back to Bill Clinton. And it shouldn't, Do
you think
meanwhile, our current president is known to have, like, gone to the teenager dressing rooms because he owned them because of the pageants and all that kind of stuff, and that has been, like, even if it comes back to Bill Clinton, Bill is here, and everybody on the Trump train is, like, up here, and my hands are low and then high, because I'm talking with my hands on a podcast, but, they're like, and, like, one of the other things they're saying is, like, well, Paul Moore, or whatever his name is, I can't remember his name, Moore should step aside, and... they're all saying this, but they're saying, okay, well, if he should step aside for this, then why not the 16 allegations that we know of for Trump? Why is he not forced to step aside? Because he has confessed on video to being a predator. I never got the sense that Monica Lewinsky was attacked.
Listen, I don't want to get going on Trump because he's not my friend, but I'm just saying I wonder how it affected her campaign. And also, do you think, because it's very interesting, she made the decision to stay with him, when that happened, back when he was the president. Do you think, had she made a different choice, the recent election would have had a different outcome?
I don't think so.
No.
Do
you think he just screwed her life by doing that?
No, I don't think, I think that misogyny and racism played way more of a decision in that race than Bill Clinton. I think it's just easy to be like, yeah, well, what aboutism? Well, what about him? Mm-hmm. But no, if you look at the breakdown of the vote by race, white women are who voted in Trump. Mm. Like, white men were exceedingly for Trump. White women were, black women and black men were like 96% for Clinton, but white women were still like 60% for Trump. And I look and I'm just like, what? It leaves me speechless to think that you could be a woman and do that. But I also think a lot of them are women who just went, oh, honey, who are we voting for? Okay, I'll check it off. This is who we're voting for because he said so, and here we are. Looking at that mountain of laundry.
Yeah, I think that all the emails, because the media hyped that up too, I think that affected it. But anyway, we got off topic about the domestic violence. So I have a question. Do you have another? No.
Okay, so I have a question because you're a new mother. So when I first had my daughter, the Iraq War was still happening, and every night the news ended with Bob Schieffer, who I love and is my celebrity grandpa crush, because Jerry Orbach died. But he would end it with America's Fallen Heroes, and every night they ended with a soldier who had been killed in combat or whatever, and I would be crying, and I finally was like, I can't watch the news because my hormones were out of control. Talking about biology, there was definitely, I couldn't read Jodi Picoult novels for 3 years, during pregnancy and breastfeeding. I couldn't watch Criminal Minds. No way. Still can't don't like watching that because Criminal Minds is always, look at this totally normal thing that's happening, and oh no, now you're getting murdered. It always is a murder that sneaks up on you. So, and the news. So Have you gone back to work full time yet?
I've not.
You've not?
No, I'm on maternity leave still.
How are you feeling as a new mom about to go stare at this, mountain of domestic violence laundry?
As far as just going back to work, I just, it feels overwhelming in the sense of I work very long hours, and I'm not, if I want to see my daughter during, at all during a day, I'm going to have to leave work earlier than I used to. So that part feels very overwhelming in the thought about like dropping her off at daycare and like, oh God.
Can your husband do that? No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
My husband and I carpool together.
Oh, okay.
So we will hopefully, in most days we carpool together. And so we'll have each other, I guess, to walk in and do that. And that's like the biggest. Kelley knows my personality. People that know me, I present very serious, and I don't mean to be. And my family laughs like that. We joke around that I have like a really cold heart because it would take a lot for me to cry. As my sisters, I have two sisters, they're totally different. They watch, they read a Jodi Picoult book and they would cry in a second, and I've read quite a few and I've never cried.
Like whatever, it's fiction.
Yeah.
Well, This Is Us. She told me, Shira said, you've got to watch This Is Us. It's so good. I watched it. I text her, I'm bawling every episode. She's okay. Then she tells, and so we're in this group. Then our other friend goes, oh, me too. Shira goes, what are you guys crying about? Like, it's all of it. It's so heartbreaking.
And so I like watch the news, and I don't know. I don't show those outward emotions, and I don't mean to feel like present as cold, because obviously this is a lot of what I do is domestic violence. And so someone even asked me like, how do you do this and stuff like that? And I think I really compartmentalize. Like when I go home, I don't, I have a great home life. I have an amazing husband. Now we have an amazing child. We're very active, and it actually has been brought. And I don't know, maybe that will, because I prosecute sexual assault cases too of children, domestic violence, and that includes child abuse cases. So I don't know, will that affect, because now I have this child? Unfortunately, I don't think it will, because I really do just come home and my life is separate than my work.
I will tell you some advice when you go back to work. So here's my advice I give to all mothers when they start to go back to work, because it is like, so the first days are going to suck, and you're going to be like, oh, and no, you won't. You'll be like, oh, great, I get to like get the bad guys. But it can be like, that drop-off can be tough. I actually really did have Dave do the drop-offs forever. And I got to do the pickups, and I was excited to see me usually. But there will be days when you're sitting at work, and you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm at work. I finished my whole cup of tea while it was warm. Nobody threw up on me. Nobody's crying. Actually, your line of work, you'll probably have people crying. But there are some days where you're like, oh, thank God. And it is like, and then you're refreshed to go and pick up your child and be like, all right, we're good. So that is my advice for whenever I hear someone's go back to work, I see them all. And also my other advice is that if you're breastfeeding, don't hang a sign on your door that says, I'm pumping. Because you don't hang a sign that says, I've gone to the bathroom to pee. You just close your door. I'm unavailable. And there you go.
And we have, I am breastfeeding, and I plan to continue, and I don't really know where I will be pumping yet at my workplace. But it's funny because where our offices are, so we're a public office, and literally anybody can just walk into our office, and I share an office with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. We have like big rooms because we really talk about cases,
right?
And in that, defense attorneys come in our office all the time. Just your door is constantly open and stuff. And so I was like talking to somebody, I was laughing about, well, if they don't find me a place, I guess I'll just have to do it right there. And, defense attorneys come in, and then case is over, I win, because they're just going to turn around and go, I'm not going any farther.
I had that happen to me. So when my first daughter, the office I was in was an open office, and I had like a cubicle, and my cube had like a service window, and people would come to that to ask me questions. And that was where I pumped. They didn't have like a pumping room or anything at the time. So I tacked up a piece of fabric over that little service window, and I'd hook up and I'd sit there, and we had work study out front. And I'd be like, hey, going to pump. And I always saw it very much as I'm showing these like 18-year-old girls what it looks like to be a working mom. Like I was like, I'm not going to be embarrassed, because if I'm embarrassed, it sets a bad example for the future. So they knew about pumping forever. So I would sit there and pump. So one time a dean came in, and the girls out front were like, no, you can't, no, she's busy. You can't go back there. And he was like, oh, I just need to talk to her for a second. And he comes by, and I'm literally like leaned back in my chair, both horns on, and he pulls back the curtain, and he looks at me, and he looks at my boobs, and he looks at me, and he looks at my boobs. And I had only been there for 2 months. It was right when I very first started. And I'm going, excuse me. All I could say was, excuse me. I'm like, excuse me. He could not figure it out at all. And finally, like, the work starter were like, she's busy. And I was like, you can come back later. And so he finally walked away. And that was one of my experiences. And he never really knew what was going on. Another time we had another woman in my building had a baby and was pumping like a year later, and she did not have an office she could pump in, so we set up a cubby in our open office, like in the back for her. And someone came like, oh, I heard Jamie was down here. And he just like walks around, and he turned the corner, and she went, no. And he was bright red, walked away. But I was like, no, we're normalizing breastfeeding. If you're not going to make it happen, we're going to make it happen.
Same guy?
No, different guy.
Oh my god.
And then the dean that I had, he had his first grandchild like a year later. I'm like, I bet he knows what I was doing now. Now that he's probably like, is that home dialysis? What's going on?
If you had never seen that,
you couldn't even process it.
I mean, it is a wacky contraption.
And I had an adjunct come in just this semester. Actually, she came in to see me about something. She comes in and she drops the bag, and I looked at it and I was like, "Are they giving you a good place to pump? You can use my office." She was like, "Yeah, I'm good." I'm like, "All right, just making sure I know the bag." Yeah, so it's that little badge of new motherhood that we watch out for. So when will you be going back to work?
I'm going back January 2nd, so right after New Year's. She's 2 months. She was born September 16th, but I'm working somewhat from home. I have an appeal I'm doing, so I'm going to be writing a brief, and I do a lot of statewide trainings on domestic violence, so I didn't want to cancel any of my trainings I was doing too. So gradually going in, so luckily I have my mom and my in-laws that will come over to the house so I can be typing away, because I had such high hopes of what I was going to get done on maternity leave.
No, actually, she told us in our friend thread that she was going to train for a marathon while on maternity leave.
No, while I was pregnant.
No.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was training for a marathon when I was pregnant.
Did you guys tell her, or did you just let her wait?
We took it to a private thread, and we were like, she is freaking crazy. We told her she was crazy, and then we were like, she's really freaking crazy.
I know. Well, maternity leave always seems like a vacation. Like, when you're looking at it from one side, you're like, this would be great. We have all this time. I don't have to get up and go to work. And, and then it becomes like a vacation where, like, the best day is when you actually get the shower and leave the house in the same day. That was my experience anyway. But I saw something that said, if they, and it is true, like, there are like these workplaces that say, oh, bring your child to work. And like, I've had to bring a kid to a meeting or bring him in before a doctor's appointment. But I saw something like, it says, if you bring your child to work, you're saying one of them isn't important.
Right.
Because you really do need to be able to focus on both parts. And so the only, the times I've brought my kids to work really are just so mostly they can be familiar with where I spend all my days away from them. So they'll come in and they'll come in and have breakfast and then go to their doctor's appointment and then they go to school or whatever. So they come in for like an hour here and there. They don't usually come in for full days, but I know that sometimes that accommodation has to be made, but I always think of that in the back of my head. One of these things isn't important.
Well, it's really hard to do both. I mean, because I've had my kids at work before out of necessity, and I'm not really working the same way I would be if they weren't there.
Totally.
But it's great that you can do it if you have to.
So do we want to move on to our favorite things?
Let's do it.
Okay, so what's your favorite thing, Shira?
My favorite thing recently is I did read a book. I'm in a book club also in Southern Maine.
I used to be in that book.
I'm pretty psyched that you've read a book recently.
Yes.
With a new baby. That's good.
Yes. Well, actually, no, what I should say is I listened to it on tape on the way to a conference.
Perfect. That works.
And it was, the book is The Year of Living Danishly. Mm-hmm. And it's about, she's from England, her and her husband, and they move to Denmark, and they're supposed to be the happiest country in the world. And so she talks all about why she's a journalist, and she compares Denmark to the United States, and a lot about school, healthcare. I mean, they go into all the issues, and I found it fascinating. And I don't know the author because I did listen to it on tape, and so I don't have
I'll
a book.
look it up. I'll put it in the show notes.
I can't remember. I'm 72% into that book as well because Shira recommended it.
I love the percent.
I know. Well, because the Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
But I started off the book and I thought, this is what we need in the United States. I want everything about it. I want to move there immediately. It's everything I talk about.
And 72% in, you think?
Well, there were some, I was surprised about some things. Like their divorce rate's quite high. And I thought, how the heck can your divorce rate be high? You guys have everything.
Maybe that's why it's high.
And
this circles way back to domestic violence. If you know you can leave and not have to worry about your rent, your food, your health care.
And she talks about that,
That's
of why
true.
that maybe they are happy because they're, nope, I'm not happy in this relationship. I have to move on.
I don't have to stay for any other reason except for my own happiness.
That's true. What was the other thing that wasn't very good? One was the divorce rate.
Well, the darkness, because they're
but
very
we have that.
dark.
Yeah.
But I think even more than it's very drastic.
Anyway, it is a great book.
So what's your favorite thing?
So I have been really into, which is, I can't even believe I'm going to say this publicly, because Shira knows how much I hate, I don't even know what the word is, but it's like pyramid schemes.
Ponzi schemes?
But they're not pyramid schemes, but
multi-level marketing.
It's
like when you're trying to sell those parties.
Yeah. So anyway, don't do any selling at parties or anything like that. But you already know this too. James is a doTERRA. I don't know. He can buy it.
He's a rep,
like a vendor.
right?
Yeah, a rep.
But he doesn't sell it.
He doesn't sell it. We buy it. And I seriously have recently started using it for health benefits. One is for you can use one for PMS. Or it's called Women's Blend. It's Claricalm, and I got it last month for the first time. It is so amazing. It actually works. And then I asked my doctor because she uses them, if she had another recommendation for stress, and so she recommended this other one, Past Tense, and I just got it 2 days ago, and it's awesome. It you're supposed to put it on your temples and the back of your neck, and it sends off like a tingle. So it's I really love this stuff, and I can't even believe that I'm saying this.
So I call, and I have them, but I call oils like that Monster Spray for grown-ups.
What's
so have you ever heard
spray?
about Monster Spray? Like you can go, like they say, if your kid's afraid of monsters in the closet, take an old spray bottle and make a sticker that says Monster Spray and just spray for monsters every night, and it protects them. So I have some of the oils. I actually got them because I get really dry, and I can hear I'm dry right now in the winter, so I actually have one next to my bed, and I use it like a mini humidifier. But one of my daughters was feeling really stressed out about it, so I was like, oh, you should try this. And so I made this big deal of like, oh, we'll get you one. This is like really going to help you calm down. And now she's like, oh, I need some of that. Like totally helps. So
yeah, placebo effect.
I don't necessarily. I think they're kind of bunk. I think a lot of it is just like, okay, because I told you you're going to not be stressed out. Now you're not stressed out because I told you this magic pill is going to help. So I have.
Well, I mean, there's quite a bit of research on aromatherapy, actually. So I do agree with you about placebo effect, but I wouldn't say that there's no evidence to support them. But then I'm part of
this group, and they'll be like, I broke my arm.
Well, within reason.
Healing, and I'm like, a cast. Plasters are really good oil for
surgery.
Yeah, like this Past Tense stuff I got, this couldn't help someone with severe anxiety disorder. This is just like me stressed out.
I have one in my office too, and you really shouldn't have them in your office, but the way my office is that my office is a private office behind a door, behind a private conference room, behind a door in another office. Like, it's so far away. If I was in a public office, I probably wouldn't do it. And even then, my coworker who's in that suite, I said when he started, I said, by the way, if you don't like this, I will take it home. Don't worry about it. And he's like, no, I love it. It's great. So he's on board, because I do think that some people are really scent sensitive. But,
I totally have it at my office, and I love it.
But your office is also a private office. It's at the end of the hall. It's not, you know.
I visited Kelley at her office today, though, and I walked out the elevator. I go, oh, I think Kelley has aromatherapy going.
I had just moved up like 5 people with the Past Tense, and they were all like, ooh, that does have a nice tingle. I got to give you some before you leave.
And then, so my favorite thing this week is going to be Find My Friends, which is an app on your phone. And nobody seems to really know about this. So I keep telling people about it who have iPhones, and I finally made all of my, Dave and I had iPhones, and my parents had Androids, and then I made them get iPhones, and my sister has an iPhone, honestly because of Find My Friends. So my parents travel a ton, And I would be like, where are they? And I'd call, and they'd be like, oh, no, we're in New Mexico, driving to Texas. I'm like, okay, whatever. So with Find My Friends, you can share your location with others, and they can share your location with you, and you can pull it up and see exactly where everyone is. And so today I actually was texting Kelley, and I texted her, and I said, oh my God, my parents are coming to take me for lunch, and I am starving. But thanks to Find My Friends, I know they're only like 20 minutes away. And my mom texted like 10 minutes later, and she was like, okay, so we'll meet you at the restaurant. I assume you're tracking us. And I was like, yes,
You can see it. Have you ever tried it?
No, but I
Shira?
want to do. So you could, like, if I lose my phone,
Yeah.
then if I've already shared with him, he can find my phone.
He can find your phone. I can tell, like,
And it tracks you in real time. James and I were doing it in the house, and he was just a couple houses down, and you could see the little dot.
So it's an app I should download on my
It's
iPhone?
an app you already have.
You already have it. You just have to sync
standard
up
on the phone. And I think there's ones for Android too, but I use this. So I can look and see. So I know that my daughters are doing this Girl Scout thing, so I can see Ingrid's phone is over at Brewer at the Girl Scout thing. My mom is
Show her.
over at Sugarloaf.
Show
My
her.
sister is at school.
Show her what the map
So-
looks like.
Here, I have to zoom in.
It's really cool. I mean, if you want to have that level of...
So I can see where everybody is.
Oh my gosh, it has our picture too.
Well, I put the picture in. But I can see, so like...
Gosh, they know everything about us.
Yeah.
And my friend, so when my best friend was, she lives in Florida, and when Irma was coming, she had to evacuate, and she was like, I don't know where we're going to go because we have pets, and I can't find a shelter. And so I was like, give me Find Your Friends. And if you find you need to find a shelter, I'll know where you are, and I'll just look for one for you. And she ended up getting I'm in your basement, so it's not pulling up the map, but she ended up finding shelter at a friend's house in another state, so it worked out. But I was like, no, I'll track you, and then I'll know where you are. So if anything happens, I know if I see you floating out in the sea. So sometimes it can sort of, like when Dave's coming home from work, it will sometimes show him as in the middle of the river. So you just have to like trust that whoever you're looking at is actually not in the middle of the river. Although my dad will be in the middle of the lake all the time fishing. So I love it. And I can tell when it's a stormy night, and if I'm driving to Sugarloaf with the girls and it's been snowing the day before, Dave doesn't have to text to be like, are you there yet? Is everything okay? He doesn't have to worry about it. He can look and be like, oh, yep, she's making good time. There she is. There she is. And if we ever didn't show up at Sugarloaf, he could pull it up and be like, well, the last place that shows is that she's in a ditch near Skowhegan, so go find her. So I love it definitely, if you don't have a relationship where you trust your partner all the time, then that would definitely be an issue.
Don't you Find My Friends?
There is domestic violence stalking is what we
Yeah, exactly. So, but for us, it's really just, I don't want to call you and make you reach over and pick up your phone and cause the accident. I just want to know that you're okay. One time there was an accident on Dave's commute, and instead of calling him, I just pulled him up on Find My Friends and saw, no, he was at work. And later he said, yeah, that happened right in front of me, because I knew the timing would have been near it, but I didn't have to call him and have him be part of the accident too. So I love Find My Friends, which is available on your iPhone, and it's already there. If you just search Find My Friends, you can set it up. And
You've sold me. I'm doing it as soon as I leave.
Awesome. All right. All right. Well, thank you for listening. You can find us on Facebook, and you can email us at balancingchaospodcast@gmail.com. And you can find us on Twitter at balancing_chaos. We're everywhere. You can listen to us on Stitcher and iTunes and Podbean. And we hope you have a great week. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.